The new Meateater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside, from grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.
Hey, I'm Tyler.
And I'm KC.
And you're listening to
The Element Podcast.
What's happening, all my woods people? It's another Element Podcast brought to you by First Light. KC, I used the Trace last night.
Did you?
Trace top.
I did too.
Man, I almost put my Merino on, actually, because my Trace is kind of dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, started wearing it for a second, and I was like, dude, it is so, I mean, it's not even that it's that hot, but it's so much hotter than the Trace. I really do like that piece, man.
Me too, man. I'm actually wearing the Trace pants right now in a solid, and I was telling Brian last night, these are probably my new favorite pant. You know, we used to wear those inexpensive Wranglers a lot, and I still do wear those, but these are cooler than those. They're lighter and cooler, which is
cooler, like, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I got some zippers, man. And I do think that over time, I mean, any lightweight thing you wear is going to struggle with durability, just like with like briars and stuff, right? So but these don't have any tears or anything. But I think that the stitching and the zippers are going to be one of the things we notice be better than some of the other stuff that we've worn. You know, like that's really when you pay for something decent, you're paying for better textile. But you're really paying for better stitching and just, you know, how they're put together. And that's one of the things those other pants kind of struggle with. But,
for sure.
Yeah.
So we today are talking about bucks. We haven't been talking about bucks just a ton lately because we are as far from buck season as possible, pretty much. We have a video coming out. It's the first of a series called The Buck Truck. Today it is coming out. And you guys ought to go watch it. You might want to listen to this podcast first because we're going to kind of recap the whole situation in Nebraska, which is the first episode. And this series will go basically from, you know, beginning of the season through December into the season. And it's going to be a chronological deal that you guys can kind of follow us throughout the season as we hop around in KC's buck truck and shoot a bunch of deer.
Woohoo!
And that's what we did. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Nebraska. This is a state that it's always intrigued me because it's fairly close to Texas in regards to just, you know, good whitetail country and other states that we could possibly go to. And there are some public land opportunities. It has an earlier season, usually starting around the 1st of September. So it's intrigued me for years. And I have now spent 4 seasons hunting in September up there. And the first 2 were very much a struggle. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about basically those struggles that I dealt with early on. And then year 3 that you convinced me to go back and do because I didn't want to go back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and about halfway through that, I could see why. Yeah,
I mean, for real, it can beat you down. And so a couple of things that you know I noticed when we struggled with early on, and I've hunted all over the state in my 4 years up there, lots of different places and different habitats, and I noticed a corresponding thing that it corresponds across the state in a lot of different areas, but there are particular spots that I think if you find a spot, it might end up being a good spot for you. And we'll talk more about that later as well. But overall, the number of bucks bigger than 1.5s, so 1.5-year-olds, bigger than that are few and far between in Nebraska. And we've kind of hypothesized that it's because they have a rifle season that's, I guess, decent length, and they allow residents to go out and pretty well put the hammer on deer in a state where, like, you can see pretty good. And so if you can shoot pretty good, you can kill a buck, I would say fairly easy compared to if you're hunting rifle in a big wood state or something like that. You only have shots out to 100 yards or whatever. Out here, if you can shoot 400, you can kill a big buck, during the rut or whatever. So we've seen that kind of put a damper on overall buck numbers probably, and especially like more mature bucks. The first year I went, we saw so many deer. I mean, I was like, this is the best habitat. This is the coolest place ever been. I was texting you, this is awesome, dude. And at the time, I was super broke, but this is something I wanted to do. And we were chasing the dream, as they say.
Dude, I remember sitting in the Brookshire's parking lot in Sulphur Springs doing that podcast with you. I don't know why I was there, but that's what we did. And I remember you talking about how it was like, this is before we were like, had the revelation, right, of that the buck number thing was a deal. And you were like, man, I just can't believe how many deer we're seeing, but I haven't seen a single shooter buck. And I was like, man, I just can't believe that. Sitting down here in Texas, this is what I was thinking. I was, man, they have to be there somewhere.
We're seeing hundreds of deer, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I bet you there was days when I might have seen 100 deer, just driving around and looking at different stuff. And they weren't, like, I wasn't seeing them from long distance either. Like, I was seeing them fairly close a lot of times. Because the habitat was so good. It was like, I feel like Nebraska sits in a place in the U.S. where, like, they don't have terribly harsh winters like you might get in a Minnesota or something, but they also don't have terribly harsh summers like you get in a Texas. It sits in that belt where, like, as you know, as a gardener, like, Missouri is a pretty good place to be a gardener. You know what I mean? It kind of sits in that geographic belt where things just grow there well. And so I was just noticing these warm season grasses that were so tall, and actually they'd had a lot of rain, so that probably added to, I'm sure, a lot of the lakes and stuff in that area. I think it was the same year that, like, South Dakota and all that stuff was like, so like, legit roads were flooded for months and months and months, and people couldn't, like, access parts of the state because of roads being flooded and stuff. But it was a good year, but there was a lot of brush. Plum thickets were going crazy. Anyway, long story short, saw a ton of deer. I hunted a spring-fed lake that I saw like 27 deer or something that night that I hunted it. It was 94 degrees. It should have been the place, right? And we saw only like 2 bucks, and they were both 1.5s, almost like a spike, And I was just blown away that we saw so many deer. So anyway, that kind of led me to start branching out the next year. And the next year, I guess that was 20, I got, I kind of figured out real quickly that, because we always wanted, you and I filmed ourselves. Like, we would film each other on trips or self-film. Well, we always were like, man, what if we could get somebody who would kind of get like a little experience, like an internship kind of thing, quote unquote. And I figured out pretty quickly that the cameraman thing is not all it's cracked up to be sometimes, because they can get the big head. And that, if you know what I mean. Really, that's a term that he knows what I mean. It's an inside joke, but essentially, I had a buck in 20 that came out at like 12 yards. I had bedded him the morning before, came out, and I had set up on him on the ground, and we were next to a fence line. My cameraman kind of poked out from the side to get the footage, which is kind of what you should do as a cameraman, right? But as a hunter, you don't want that to happen, because you get silhouetted as soon as that buck crosses the fence line and comes out. And
it's the movement that's the issue here.
It is. Yeah. And he got seen, and it happens to the best of us. So that buck locked in on us and then just took off real quick before I could even do anything. So it was a bad situation overall. It was the only way I could hunt that buck was to be on the ground next to the fence line in the tumbleweeds. So, but that's something that we started to learn in Nebraska, was that cameraman, struggles can be a thing. It's trying to get 2 dudes past the senses of a deer is tough, man.
Yeah, and then lining up the cameraman and the hunter is another thing. So this goes back to, you and I were talking about this a while ago. You went up there with our friend Anthony a couple years back, and like y'all hadn't hunted together a whole lot. You filmed together quite a bit in the past, but if you don't have like the jive going on, things can get kind of haywire.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. I was. He shot at a doe that I had no clues fixing to shoot. I mean, I was on the deer barely, but I didn't know he was fixing to shoot it, and so he shot, and I was like, "What? What just happened? Did you accidentally shoot?" You know, and luckily he didn't hit it. You know.
Yeah.
But and we ended up getting footage of a diker that he shot after that.
Which is cool.
It was cool. We were stoked, man.
Yeah. Then that kind of all brings us to the year 2021, where you and I went up there together. I talked you into it because I wanted to go real bad and wasn't able to the first 2 seasons that you went. And I talked you into going, and you were like, "I'm not," and then I loaded you up in the truck anyways and made you go.
I was done, dude. I mean, it's a long ways up there. We were struggling physically and mentally because of like lack of sleep and stuff. I mean, we were, we did have a hotel for a few nights in 2020, but in 19 we camped, and it was hot that year. Like I said, it was 94 one day. I was crawling it was in literally the most mosquito infested place I have ever been, dude. And we've hunted on the coast and all kinds of stuff. And you would like get into your tent as quick as possible and try to smash out the few mosquitoes that got in there. And then you would just go to sleep on your sleeping bag, sweating your tail off. And by the end of that trip, it was so nasty. And I had like 2 ticks around my sock line that I didn't even know were there until like I changed at the very end, getting ready to go home. That like I had a tick whelp after I pulled one of them out for like 2 months. Because it'd probably been there for like 2 days, and I didn't know.
That's not good.
Yeah, it was just terrible, dude. It was so uncomfortable.
And then I talked you into camping again.
Yeah, that's right. In 21, like you said, it brings us 21. We're camping again, and I'm like, the weather doesn't look that bad, and it wasn't really like that. Like as far as temps go, know. So
it felt nice. It's
Yeah.
just, in the 70s they had these things called like water fans. You know what I'm talking about? It's like before the air conditioners, they had water fans. It was kind of like add humidity to the room and cool you off, which I don't know how that works. But that's kind of what we had in Nebraska, where, there's a storm in the distance. Let's get some cool lightning video of this storm cloud. Oh, there's a storm over our heads. It's raining. Let's better get in the tent.
Yeah.
Oh, this tent is only waterproof for so long, and then all of a sudden every raindrop is a mystification.
Yeah. We got mystified.
Dude, we were so wet in that tent. Just no sleep. That's the night before opening day that year.
Yep.
And ended up...
How bad did it hurt your soul that we didn't hunt opening morning?
Oh, it was the worst.
The new Meateater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.
It was absolutely the worst because again, that trip we struggled with buck numbers and hunter pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was hunter pressure was a thing that year for sure. And
everywhere.
I mean, we definitely had seen some hunter pressure in the years before, but we started to. I think word gets out in certain areas about different things, but there was we even got scoped out by some dudes that, I think knew who we were.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't. I mean, I didn't feel like anybody should know who we were at the time, but these dudes did, and
they were nice.
They were fine.
Yeah.
But you just like crossing paths with people,
Oh,
too many people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and opening morning, we'd scouted some the day before, and we're like, okay, there's people around. We got to go find some deer to hunt. Get up out of the tent late because we only slept like probably 3 hours that night, and we're going to go glass this spot. We see 2 shooter bucks go past hanging trees and places that we would, like if we'd have got there 2.5 hours earlier,
we would have hung.
We would have hung in those trees.
Yep.
And we didn't because we had such a terrible night. And then for like the next 5 days, those were the only bucks we saw. Mm-hmm. We could not ring one out anywhere. So it was like, and I thought we were about to be in paradise. Because like, oh man, look at those 2 bucks. Sweet.
Again, we're trying a new part of the state, trying to figure this thing out,
You're like, oh, this is going to be great. You can see long ways. Find bucks all over. No. Find dudes all over.
That's right.
Find does all over.
Bird hunters all over.
Bird hunters everywhere. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I had that guy come off the hill, just mess me up and walked right through my set. Yep. It's whatever, public ground, yay. But it's all well and good until, a guy with a spaniel runs underneath your tree. So that was the struggle on that trip is finding a deer to hunt and avoiding people and getting around the weather. And it was tough, man.
Yeah. I mean, it was. And the weather thing, it affected our sleep to the point that your decisions are not, your decisions are not being made well. And you're dealing with these same things we've been seeing. And here we are, year 3. I feel like, why did I let KC talk me into this thing? and we had decided that there was some pretty good looking stuff quite a ways away that we had pre-scouted, and we decided to go to a different place, a different area, right? And we thought, well, if this is far enough away that it's a commitment, so we can't hunt it unless, and we thought we would try to find some creative access if we ran into trouble, where we were at. And so we decided to quote unquote spike out. And I don't mean do what Michael does, or anything, but
inside jokes.
We're headed to this new place, and we go in to give it a try in the afternoon. And if you know me, if you listen to this podcast for a while, you probably know I got a lot of confidence in the afternoon sit a lot of times. That's I like afternoon hunts best. And so I'm feeling pretty good. KC had actually that morning had bombed into a spot pretty far in and kind of burned himself out, not seeing deer, right?
Yeah, it was bad. I found the spot on the map, just did the triangulation thing. It's like
should have been good.
Over a mile from the closest road. I carried in all my stuff. We were self-filming, right? No camera guys. Eric joined us the next hunt.
Yeah.
It was when Eric started doing stuff with us. Yeah. They had to get a half bacon in Illinois.
Take it easy before the season.
That's right.
Size on that is.
But I was just beat. I also think I wore my rubber boots on that walk, which was a bad idea.
Yeah.
But it was kind of wet through some of that stuff. So
that's right.
Anyways, so I decided to kind of do a layup, somewhat of an observation stand, but still, I was hunting a pretty nice little bed to feed pattern. It was just further up close to the road, and I saw deer. I mean, I had shots at does, didn't take. Just didn't have any bucks. But you decided to just be, the Cameron Haynes of the early season.
That's what I am, dude.
I know. You hammered it out.
You always hear me saying nobody cares, right?
That's right. Nobody. You don't hear you say work harder. You just say nobody cares.
That's exactly right. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So anyway, I did bomb back in pretty far, really far, and basically between KC and I, there was some options, but nothing I felt real confident about. And so I had a spot picked out on the map that I was like, I'm going to see what things look like on the way in, but I kind of want to get to this spot, and if it's pretty good, set up here. So I do, and essentially this spot it's kind of got like 2 trails that you would potentially hunt, in my opinion, what I'm seeing from the aerial, like 2 sides of this thing, this kind of tree line thing or whatever. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna look at both sides. Well, I kind of have this thing, like probably a lot of you do, where if you get further back in, you feel better about your chances. And so I hunted the furthest trail, and I ended up setting up, and I don't know, it starts getting golden hour, and I turn around, and there's a big old buck on the other trail behind me, downwind, and I'm like, man, he's fixing to get my wind. Of course, I get the camera turned around to get it on him. He gets my wind, takes off. I get footage of it, and he's blowing and runs off. And I was just like, texting K.C. I'm like, I'm so mad because I'm like, I walked so far in here. It's hot as all get out. Like I sweated my tail off. It's like, you know, elk hunting back in here. It's so steep and all this and that. I'm like, if I came all the way back in here and messed this whole thing up, I'm just going to hit myself in the head to make myself go to sleep tonight. And so I sit there for another 35 minutes or so. I think I texted the group, and maybe old Hunter HTH told me something along these lines of like, be ready, because he's seen where like when a deer starts making some weird noises or blowing, sometimes it attracts other deer. And sure enough, it did. And I had a buck come out where now you and I think deer come out. But instead of taking a certain trail, he walked straight towards me from there. So I'm between him and where that buck had blown. So he's walking straight at me because he's walking over there, I think, to see what's going on. This is literally 30 to 40 minutes later. But he for sure was bedded and heard that, I think.
This is a thing that animals do, specifically males of the species. Like I think about elk and deer and turkeys, and maybe even pigs. That still remains to be seen. A little more
the other night.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
But it's fast. But still, they are intrigued.
Yeah.
Because they're driven sexually, right? They're trying to reproduce. So
well, even socially too.
Yeah, socially.
A little bit.
Yeah. The dominance then, results in, prowess when it comes to breeding or whatever. But so there's this thing of I need to just make sure. They don't know what they're making sure of, but they're just like,
yeah.
What's going on
Dude,
over there? Am I missing out?
That buck stood over there for a long time and just keyed up and looked over in that direction, even though he couldn't see nothing. Guarantee you. And then finally he works up the nerve and probably has seen it before. I mean, how many dudes are going to spook a deer and then stand there for 35 minutes? Not any really. So he probably thought coast is clear, but I'm just going to make sure. So he walks over towards where he heard that blow, and he's going to try to smell and see and all this and that. And if you've ever watched the video, you can see where this buck is creeping. Well, this dude's coming at me. He's kind of got his eyes up because he's looking in that direction. I can't do nothing, dude. I mean, I barely can get the camera. I follow him pretty well, overall. But, he gets out of the camera at, 12 yards. And I'm like, all right, it's time to just get a shot. I ain't filming this thing anymore. At this point, I've done the best that I can do. Now I'm going to put a shot on.
And the footage is sick.
It is cool. Yeah. The actual fall after the shot is my favorite, my most, meaningful camera footage probably. But anyway, he comes right under my stand. I have to shoot so steep down that I have to, really focus on what my waist is doing and, how I'm bending and making sure my T is still formed really well.
First year of a saddle, too, by the way.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is right. And so very tricky situation to navigate. Anyway, long story short, I shoot the deer straight down between the shoulder blades. Smoked him. Didn't know for sure. Walk out. Bring KC back in. We find this deer. He basically jumped off of the Grand Canyon. And we find him in the bottom. We cut him up, haul him out of there, and we decide to get a hotel. At 3 a.m. because we're beat. We need some showers. So we do that thing, and we kind of learned that, you know what, hotel life ain't too bad if you can afford it a little bit.
Having a decent bed, we've talked about this a lot, and this trip, for sure, I'm in agreement. This is the one where I had the revelation, because I've always been the drive through the night, sleep wherever, on the side of the road.
Nobody cares kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of that was just out of just being poor.
Yep.
And a lot of it is also I just kind of have a chronically optimistic look on things sometimes. So I always just it's going to be okay. We're going to make it work.
Yep.
Which is true, but you can perform better if you get a better situation.
The more you and I hang out, the more we lean towards the other guy's
That's it.
demeanor.
It's just
you know what I mean?
homogenizing over here.
It's exactly right. It's like I'm more optimistic now, and you're more realistic
That's
now.
right. So I now live by the standard of that. I'd rather have 5 hours of sleep in a really good bed than 6.5 of like just
Mystifying.
Yeah, junky tent sleep. You know,
Yep.
like it's what you just get so much more rest when you get to get good rest. And a shower, man,
Dude.
I like being tough. I mean, I do. I like the thought of just being a rough and tumble type guy, but a shower every day just makes you feel really good.
Keeps the doctor away, man.
I guarantee you.
I mean, I'll tell you this. So I talked about this morning with my barber, but I noticed this because we kind of talk for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Like the podcast thing is where we started this thing, right? And you guys probably can't tell because we play it off a lot. But, dude, there are times when we are so exhausted during a hunt and we're podcasting, the words can't come out. Like I can't put the words out right. Like I'm slurring. Y'all can't understand me. And I even will say a sentence that's got the most basic adjectives in it because I can't think of the normal adjectives that I would use. You know, like we were going.
Yeah.
You know,
he was big and nice.
that's right. We were going when he was big and nice, and some big words there. But that's the truth of the situation. So what I'm saying is that makes you realize also when you see that you can't perform that way, think about taking what you've seen from deer that morning and applying it to a map situation and finding a way to go kill that deer in the evening. Not to mention, you've got to walk 9/10 of a mile and you're exhausted. You know, like things are just compounded, right? It's the whole Mark Kenyon scent theory. The whole argument he has is, you know, if I can bring a bunch of 1% betters to my game, it makes me 10% better or whatever. So that's kind of the way this is.
Well,
but
why doesn't he lift weights if that's his theory?
That's a good question, man. It's a good question. You should ask him that for sure. I know you will. But anyway, so this whole thing kind of brings us, from the 21 situation where we ended in a hotel and felt good after that.
And you shot a big buck.
And we ate some
Let's
Casey's
not forget.
Pizza, that next morning to 22, where we're thinking, okay, we found a pretty cool spot. Potentially this spot is good because the first evening in, it paid off with a nice, like probably 16, 17 inch wide buck, like a nice buck. Hopefully this translates into our 22 stuff a little bit. In the summer, we find out there is a massive drought from Texas all the way up to, through the Plain States pretty much. So definitely covering this area of Nebraska, all of Nebraska. And, we decide, you know what? Let's try something different. Let's move away to another area, which goes against what you think. But hopefully what we find there will we can translate that to where we're going. And also with that drought on the way up, we started talking a lot about water.
And this also is probably one of those times where my influence isn't always the best because I have a little bit of this thing of like wanting to see something new, which I know you do too because you kind of like have a goal of hunting a new state every year. And so like you kind of have that. I just kind of do it more just case by case basis. And I was like, man, we went to that place last year. I wonder what it's like over here, and that's just kind of how I just like exploring. It's fun to see new stuff. And like you said, on the way up, we got to talking and looking at the map and thinking about how like detrimental the water situation was in this part of the country. And, it's like, I think about as dry as it gets, right? Like it's dusty.
I think so.
And so we decided, hey, water is going to be the most limited resource. Deer can find food. They can find cover anywhere, and that's apparent, because they live in some wide open places. And so let's just try to figure out where these things are going to be watering. And we've been talking to Tony Peterson, who's actually on Buck Truck on the South Dakota episode. But Tony is like the king of water. And so, and for good reason, he's killed a lot of deer over water. He's a good hunter. So I believe him. So we're like, okay, let's like commit to this thing. Because one of the things about hunting water, I feel, is that you can't just do it for an evening hunt or whatever and be like, oh, well, I guess water's not the pattern. Because deer just aren't that way. It's just like if you're a feeder hunter in Texas, like you know that if you hunt that feeder once and don't see your target buck, that doesn't mean that you're not going to shoot him there someday.
Right.
Right. And water's the same thing. It's just a location that deer visit when they need to. So that was kind of our plan, just to find some water on the map and go as far as we can and get as far away from people and hunt a little later in the year so that we have less hunters around and kind of add all that up into killing deer, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. And you spent some time. We spent time glassing a lot early, and I was back to the old can't find a buck bigger than 75 inches. I found a couple of actual 2-year-olds, but I was hoping to shoot something over 100 inches, like a 3-year-old type of deer.
I remember this, that we were talking about this. Now, this is the buck truck stuff we're talking about now, guys. Like, we went to Nebraska on buck truck, and this is all stuff you're going to be able to watch. When, Tyler? When can you watch this?
As soon as you get done listening to this podcast.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
It goes out on Tuesday, May 2nd at high noon Central, which is very soon. Okay, so we have two different approaches when it comes to these type of hunts. I like to see stuff. I like to be where I can see, especially when I'm like, it's the first early part of the hunt. I can observe, make moves, maybe chase around the ground.
You and Eagle Eye should hunt more often then.
You're right. So you, on the other hand, you also like those things, I think, but you had a different strategy for that first opening morning.
Yeah, I just I hunted I've hunted a similar place before that I thought, like, in this exact micro particular spot, a place similar, set up well, and I thought it would be good. Bombed in because I wanted to hang in a tree and give myself a chance right off the bat, and found out as soon as we got in that morning there was cows had been everywhere and just destroyed this place. And so I sat anyway, and it didn't pay off. But I did spend the next few days kind of doing more what you did, and just could not find shooter bucks, but you were finding the opposite.
Yeah, first morning I set up where I could see a water source and had 4 bucks coming to the water source. Tried to make a move on them quick and made the wrong move, which stinks. But it set us up later for some more good encounters. But like 2 giants, in my opinion, for the country. I don't think that there's much good footage of them just because it happened real fast, and I was thinking about killing more than I was getting them on film. So decided that was going to be a place to try to make some ambushes on, and set up over the water real close. Never had deer come into range. But in the same general area, because it was close to the resources the deer needed, spotted some bucks that were bedding kind of up in a little pocket, a buck pocket, as you'd say. It's on the back of your jeans.
Buck hole.
Yeah.
We call them buck
buck
holes.
hole.
That's
Yeah.
also near the back of your jeans.
That's right. But made a stalk on some really, really nice bucks. And I was, dude, at this point,
Oh,
in
you
the
had them
season,
killed.
I am so dialed, dude. Like, I have a tendency to be a little overconfident in my abilities, as a lot of people do, I think. But I'm not joking. When I say I could bust a quarter at 60 at this time of the year, I'm telling you, dude, like, I'm shooting good.
You were dialed.
In late September, man. I mean, I'm smoking it, right? And I've got a giant buck. I don't know what to put him at score-wise. I mean, he's like a Pope and Young class deer or whatever. At 60 yards, dead calm, and I am, like, about to get a shot at this thing. And something messes it up. Old prairie wolf came in and ran these deer right up in our throats. These deer go from 60 to like 8 yards in our faces, and I can't get my sight. I had my sight tape rolled down to 60 to take the shot. I can't get it up, and then they just take off into Bolivia.
The big one stops and looks at you for like a long enough time to get a shot if you'd have had it ready.
I thought about So I have shot a few animals looking down the arrow in my day. Like at night when you're walking into the stand and there's a skunk, you just kind of like look down there and shoot him. I hadn't done that in a long time, but I remember doing that when I was a kid.
Greg's got a nickname.
Does he?
New nickname we found out last night.
Really?
Papa Skunk.
Papa Skunk, huh?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I could have looked down the arrow at this deer, but I was like, you know what, man? I don't think there's like this thing called ethics or whatever. You know, it's so subjective. But for me, it just wasn't a shot worth taking.
Sure.
You know?
Hey, it's all good, man. You don't feel good about it, don't shoot it.
That's right.
It ain't no big deal, man. You know, you live with
That's it.
It's your
And that's
fault.
what's funny is that I felt great about the 60-yard shot. But the 10-yard shot, I was like, no, I ain't taking that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a split-second decision, you know.
Yeah.
You may have been, if you thought about it 3 or 4 seconds
And
longer, it
still
might
to
have been
this
different.
day, I'm happy I didn't
Yeah,
take the
there you
shot.
go.
You
There
know,
you
I
go.
don't regret it at all.
Yeah.
But
Especially
it was
now.
sad to see 2 buckholes running away.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I saw.
Yeah, that was, and this is on video, so, you know, we're going to give you most of this, but not all of it.
Not all of
You're
it.
going to have to watch some of it. But,
So that kind of, after that spookage right there, because those deer were double spooked. The coyote spooked them to us, and then they for sure were spooked when they saw 2 dudes.
There's a daggum bear on these plains. I hadn't seen that since the 1700s.
So you and I had a little meeting midday, and we were like, hey, I just blew out my spot. You hadn't found anything. So let's put some rubber to the road and go just buck truck it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And we
always pre-scout this stuff on the maps, and we look at the whole state if we got the option.
That's a good point, man.
You know.
Like I talk about having options A through F or even more. You know, like if you're on an out-of-state hunt, there's no reason to confine yourself to something. You know, have some backups. The wind can blow out of 360 different directions, right?
Yep.
So like you never know when you might need a different spot or just need to bounce for some reason. And this was the exact time to do it.
Yep, for sure. And that's what we did. We thought, you know what? We have a spot that has worked for us in the past. Let's go see what's going on over there. And so we made the trip over to this area. And the thing that we saw with your encounters so far on that trip related to 21's encounter, where big bucks were far from entry points. And so we knew that this was another option we had where we could walk a long ways in and probably not deal with people because of that and encounter big bucks. Because where you had that encounter with those bucks was a long ways from the road. You know?
It was, man.
So people just don't want to do that, and that's fine. If you don't want to, I understand it. I personally would rather hunt some permission where I could drive, you know, my truck to within a quarter mile, hide it in the woods, and go hunting. You know what I mean? But it doesn't happen for us all the time because we hadn't always been able to do that. And so in this situation, we thought this is a spot. So we went back after we got, I don't even remember. It was we did an evening hunt, so I don't know. I think we had decided the next morning we would leave. So we hunted that evening, and then the next morning we would get up, leave, and, you know, because it was going to take some time to get there, give us time if we left early enough to get into the woods and kind of make plans. And so here's another thing about a drought situation is that, especially in an extreme drought like we had, not only is water very limited, but food is also limited. And they're going to find food because there's food on the landscape. But if you have you know, crops, then that stuff a lot of times is going to be better than what has been naturally growing in drought situations. So the deer can't just browse their way slowly to the crop situation because there's not a whole lot to eat and it's not very tasty.
Yeah.
We noticed, like, in our area in particular, snowberries were like, there was barely any of them. And the year before, it was like the whole plains were pretty lush and green. There's snowberry everywhere up there, right?
Yeah.
In South Dakota and stuff too. So that stuff was like non-existent pretty much. Leaves weren't even on these things hardly. So we decided that we would go in and hunt because these two things were kind of lining up far from the entry to keep hunters out of the way a little bit, and then also just the fact that there would be some food around. And so we decided to walk in and there's 5 of us. No, there's 4 of us walking in. We actually found a place for old E. Gentry, Eagle Eye, to hunt as well, and let him kind of hunt. And the 4 of us go to walking in, so we're kind of about like a herd of elephants leaving a dust trail, through this stuff. But you and I are going to scout our way in, kind of, and decide for sure. But I had told you, I was like, man, why don't you hunt where I hunted last year, and I'll hunt not far from you, but I'll hunt closer to where I had kind of seen that bigger buck catch my wind, and just see if that was an anomaly or what. And so we kind of looked at some stuff even further or closer as we're walking in, and I wasn't super thrilled about it, but there was some stuff I could definitely live with. And we're getting pretty close to where, the last spot that I potentially was going to be at, right? And I'm like, man, I might could make this work from the ground right here. And you're like, okay, well, holler at me if you need something, but I think I'm going to go on and hunt. You leave, and probably like 30 seconds later, I hear or whatever.
That's my woods noise.
Yeah.
So, I've decided that there's no quail anymore. So, the quail whistle doesn't make any sense because deer are like, what's that? I'm kind of joking. But, not about there not being any quail. There aren't any quail.
Yeah,
but,
no, quail unlimited is not really it's kind of an ironic statement, isn't it?
It's pretty limited. But I've decided that is like a pretty natural sound in the woods, like crickets or whatever, like just a little tick-tick.
Yeah.
Anyways, when you heard me do that and you were like,
yeah, I look up and you're like, you give me this little like finger to the ground kind of swipe, like there's a trail here, and you point at it and you're like, this, I can see you mouthing like this is the spot. And I was like, okay. I walk over there, and it's the trail that I assumed at least that the buck had probably walked the year before. But it's so dry, the trail is really beat and dusted. You know what I mean? Like, so you can see it really well. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to hunt this thing, find a way. You're like, cool, we go on, split up. Me and Michael find a way to get up in a tree, and it's a really good tree, actually. And we get up in this tree, get set up, and it's pretty warm, and I range the trail, and it's like, I think I was ranging like 28, I think, to where I figured if a buck walked that trail, that's where my shot would be. And I ended up basically seeing that this trail was also walking the crops, so that kind of helped me make a decision as well. And long story short, I saw a bunch of deer.
You sure did.
What'd you do once we split up?
I went to the tree that you had hunted previously, and
then you started singing Creed. Can you take me higher?
I didn't realize how high you could get in that tree, and I was like, that's a good idea. I'm going to get up there. And
Papa Skunk was scared.
Worked. He was, dude. Greg, dude, Greg has come a long ways with his comfort in a tree. At one point in time, I feel like, he's from the hill country in Texas and spent a lot of time in the tree. And when we get over like 10 foot high, he kind of was like a little weird about it. But now, after that experience, he's like,
you get used to it, man.
Yeah, dude.
There's times when I lean back with my saddle and I'm like, I should have checked before I leaned backwards. What was I thinking? I mean, I pretty much, I guess, subconsciously knew, but it kind of gives me this weird pit feeling in my stomach where I'm like, I didn't check at all. I could have just leaned back and fallen out of this tree.
With the lineman belt and then the tether is like sometimes, so, I'll be just fully transparent with y'all. I don't wear a lineman belt all the time. I feel safer without it on sometimes. Now, this is personal preference, but that's how I am. I do, whenever I need it, I put it on.
But they should wear one, right?
They should do whatever they feel the safest.
How about that? You don't have to tell people what to do.
You can make a personal choice.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. There's like this transition when you do wear a lineman belt and you're on your platform that you take your lineman belt off and then put your tether on, or, if you want to really be safe, you put your tether on, then take your lineman belt off. But like, there's a gap in there. If you don't remember to do one or the other, then like suddenly you're not hanging.
Yep.
You're standing.
Yep. You are standing in a tree.
Remember to do that. Right? So yeah.
But what'd you see? Did you go out and look at any trails, or did you just you're like, okay, I know this is
in the intel provided to me from my good hunting partner, Tyler Jones.
Let's go, dude.
That's it, dude. I wasn't
Golly,
gonna.
so trusting.
You know, one of the things I don't like doing is stomping around. I learned way back in it's probably January 2018, I think, right?
Yeah.
That messing around out there, trying to figure out the place to be and the place to hang is just a good way to lay down some ground scent and mess stuff up.
It is, dude. You know, I can bet you old Eric Gentry has been like, what is this dude thinking? Because I will stand at a tree and look at like 3 trees and a couple of trails for 15 minutes straight. I mean, legit 15 minutes just looking at this stuff, just trying to decide instead of walking around.
Why I left you back.
Yeah, because I was standing and looking.
Well, yeah, and I knew I needed to do at least a little bit of looking.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, we hadn't been there yet. Who knows? The tree might have got struck by lightning and ain't there anymore. I got to make a new decision or something, you know. But like, I didn't need to stand there and let you figure out exactly what you were doing whenever I needed to be figuring out what I was doing. But that's what you were doing down there, is figuring all that stuff out.
Yep.
Yeah. So I got in the tree and saw a few deer and saw one nice one. And
he was far though, wasn't he?
He was real far. Y'all need to tune into Buck Truck on the Meateater YouTube channel.
Yep.
And you'll see what happens with all that stuff.
Dang, dude, $5.
No,
$5.
I said you'll. I didn't say we. I said you'll.
Y'all see what
y'all see what happens.
Y'all will see.
I know what happens.
We're not going to see. Y'all will see.
That's right.
Well, yeah, that is a truism though. They need to go see what happens.
They do.
If you subscribe to the channel, it'll update you every time that a new Buck Truck Series video comes out, which will be weekly for the next like 2 months, pretty much. So be ready for that. You're going to see some familiar faces if you know any of the Meateater crew: Tony Peterson, Mark Kenyon, Clay Newcomb. Those guys hunted with us this year. We have worked so hard. We worked so hard during the season to get this stuff produced, as far as like camera, killing deer, all that stuff. And then we've worked so hard in the back end to bring music of the general region into these episodes. We've brought, just the whole, even visually, like what this region represents and show like what it looks like in the area, the economy, the social structures, all these different things. And so we've worked really hard in the editing side of this thing as well. This is our, key, just, zenith of production or whatever you want to call it. Like this is the very tip of what we can produce right now, and we're going to be even better next year. But this is the best thing that I've ever done as far as video production goes, and I really am excited about it. I hope you guys love it, and I really want you to go check it out on the Meateater's YouTube channel right now. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for all the support. Make sure and comment and all that anything kind that you want to, and anything you want us to take into mind next year. We appreciate it. We love you guys. And remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
The new Meateater Outdoor Cookbook Wild Game Recipes for the Grill, Smoker, Campfire, and Camp Stove is out on April 24th and is available for pre-order now. Here is your book for everything that's best cooked or eaten outside. From grilling to open fire cooking to Dutch ovens to smokers to barbecue to backpacking meals to how to pull off the perfect fish fry, with pit stops along the way for lessons about Ice Age cooking methods and the best 5 ways to construct a cooking fire you can be proud of. And of course, we're focusing on wild game and fish here with over 100 recipes, including stuffed venison burgers 3 ways, wild duck with ahi verde sauce, a jerky made with cola, a gin and tonic made with fire-charred lemons, and grilled frog legs made with a sticky sweet sauce. This ain't your normal cookbook, so be prepared to be surprised. Pre-order your copy now. For more info, visit themeateater.com.